Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us again. I'm going to be having a conversation with Dr. Preetesh Jain. He's joining us here from the University of Texas, and he's going to talk about some new CALQUENCE data that was presented at ASH 2020. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dr. Jain.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe. I'm going to talk about the data which is presented for the long-term follow-up of CALQUENCE, which is acalabrutinib, single-agent study, which was 38-month follow-up was presented this time in ASH 2020. And as you know, that relapsed mantle cell lymphoma is a kind of aggressive disease. And this is the longest follow-up with the acalabrutinib single-agent data and shown very impressive results. And particularly striking is that this is a single-agent acalabrutinib, which is an oral TKI, tyrosine kinase inhibitor. It's not a chemotherapy as such, but it is one of the agents which blocks a particular enzyme called as BTK in the mantle cell lymphoma cells and then leads to treatment responses. So this agent is orally available, and this study shows that sustained responses were achieved in 124 patients who were treated with relapsed mantle cell lymphoma with 2 prior lines of therapy. And 81% patients had the best overall response with a 48% CR rate. With the 38-month follow-up, the median overall survival has not reached. And also the median progression-free survival for these patients was more than 22 months. And that is, in my experience, a very impressive results from BTK, which are orally available treatment. Now, other important aspect which is differentiating this agent from ibrutinib, which is another BTK inhibitor which is commonly used, is the side effect profile. So, particularly for these patients who were treated with acalabrutinib, the side effect profile is quite different because mechanism of action and the off-target activity of acalabrutinib is quite minimal compared to ibrutinib. And as you can see in the long-term follow-up data, the side effect profile is quite favorable. The adverse event profile, particularly we are concerned, the patients and the treatment physicians, they are concerned about the bleeding events and the cardiac events. And you can see compared to the grade 3-4, higher degree of bleeding events were seen in only 4% patients, and the cardiac events were observed only in 6 patients, and these were 5% only. And these patients also, majority of these patients who had cardiac events, most of them, 11 out of 16 patients had a prior cardiac history. So but compared to ibrutinib, which was much higher, around 15% in long-term follow-up with the different clinical profile. So that is that according to me is a quite impressive side effect profile and sustained duration of responses. And another important thing was that 6 of the 30 patients which had available samples, they were minimal residual disease negative, and they maintained MRD negative response at the last assessment. This is another important highlight of this data. And another important highlight of this data, 2 other important highlight of this data was that when you subdivide these patients into high risk versus low risk, that is high Ki-67 more than 50% or low Ki-67 less than 50%, the duration of response was much longer in low Ki-67 patients, but not in patients who are high Ki-67. That suggests that for patients with high risk, single-agent acalabrutinib may not be as good as other treatment options which are now emerging, such as the CAR-T therapy. But for low Ki-67, clearly you can see that the duration of response was 36 months at long-term follow-up. Now, out of the 124 patients at the time of last follow-up, 24 patients still remained on acalabrutinib, and total of 55 patients remained on study, that is 44%. That is a kind of a good result from long-term data.
Doctor, once again, how many patients were evaluated? You said 126, I think?
124.
124. Out of those 124, were all of them at an equal level of disease progression? Were they in early detection or in the most aggressive stages of some of their disease?
No, they were not all at a equal disease. The median range of therapy, the median prior lines of therapy was 2. Mm-hmm. And most of these patients, they had, it was a heterogeneous mixture of patients. So, for example, 59 patients had only 1 prior therapy. More than 2 prior lines of therapy was seen in 37 patients. More than 3 prior lines of therapy was seen in 28 patients. And we know that patients who have higher lines of prior therapy, they were at higher risk compared to patients who had only 1 prior line of therapy. So they were not at equal stages. They were all relapsed, but they were different.
So, and I'm assuming that went across gender and age as well?
Yes, mm-hmm. But majority of males.
Majority of males, okay. Was that simply a happenstance, or was that a deliberate arrangement?
No. It just happens. The main criteria was relapsed patients. Mm-hmm. Patients should have failed prior therapy. And then all comers were taken into account.
Let's talk about the anticipated availability of CALQUENCE.
Yeah, so this is approved, FDA approved. This was already FDA approved almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. For patients who have failed prior therapy, prior chemotherapy. And this is FDA approved drug for relapsed mantle cell lymphoma. We are actually conducting clinical trials with acalabrutinib in the frontline setting for elderly patients. That is coming up. That trial is open at MD Anderson. We have another trial which is open for acalabrutinib in patients who are not able to tolerate ibrutinib. That is the switch study. And we have another trial open with acalabrutinib in combination with another agent called as venetoclax for relapsed mantle cell lymphoma.
Now, just to be clear, CALQUENCE is developed by AstraZeneca. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Where can our listeners go online and get some more information about ASH 2020 and about CALQUENCE as well?
CALQUENCE, you can just go to the CALQUENCE website. They have a package insert, and they provide you full details on the package insert on CALQUENCE, where you can look at side effects, what doses, what are the do's and don'ts. And you can also check on UpToDate online, where under the drug information, you can get all the patient-related patients can understand what CALQUENCE is, how does it work, what are the side effects, what are the do's and don'ts, how many tablets, whether empty stomach, what other tablets should not be taken with CALQUENCE, and what are the side effect profile. So that's available on UpToDate as well. And for ASH 2020, all the abstracts are available online, publicly available. They can just Google ASH Abstract 2020 and they can get access.
And that website for CALQUENCE would be www.calquence.com. That's CALQUENCE.com.
Yeah, that is calquence.com is another official website. But they can also find out from AstraZeneca. But there is a website, calquence.com. There also they can get it.
Just simply Google AstraZeneca and their website will come.
Yeah, and then the search AstraZeneca or Asserta.
Well, Dr. Jain, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio, giving us this information, hoping that we'll be speaking again.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day and safe time.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.